Catus Maximus here, talking about the newer generation of 72 tooth quick release master mechanic ratchets. These are actually gear wrench ratchets, and that's the whole point. I'm actually gonna try to find all the different brands that have rebranded gear wrench ratchets under them. We do have master mechanic, and we also have duralast. And just to prove the point, I do have a 84 tooth gear wrench here, and it seems that the cheaper ones that they're rebranding are indeed a cheaper unit. They, for some reason, I think Husky has one, and so I will probably pick up one of those. Is the fact that they're 72 tooth over 84 teeth. One of the other things I was noticing is even though the switches are the same, they don't do the stamping the on and off, which makes it a little bit cheaper. But I believe that the whole anvil, the whole set, even though this is a 1/2 inch drive and this is a 3/8, relatively speaking, I believe that the parts are just a little bit smaller, the pawls are a little bit smaller, and you can see the machining is different. And then upon my research, I found that the actual gear wrench brand ratchets are made in Taiwan. But these, they're rebranded ones like the Duralast here and this Master Mechanic are actually Chinese ratchets. So they are not Taiwanese, they are Chinese ratchets, but still, nonetheless, this is probably one of the better ratchets True Value Hardware has had. And it's at least nice to see. What True Value does is it seems almost all their acetate handle screwdrivers, the square drives, star drives, and regular are all Pratt Reed. Even my store had some older ones on the shelf that were actual square handle Pratt Reeds. And so they have some American-made tools, which are actually pretty common ones, doing the screwdrivers. And then they have other tools, which are, of course, imports. But nonetheless, I think people will be relatively satisfied with this ratchet just because, even though the anvil isn't that tight, it does have a pretty decent quick release. It is pretty stiff spring in there, so it does hold on real solid. They do something different where it retracts real deep in the hole, so it actually pushes this ball bearing out with a surprising amount of force. As much criticism as I've given this about being Chinese, surprisingly enough, they did do a pretty good job on the actual quick release, just the design and execution of the quick release, because it is super duper solid. It isn't one of these quick releases that barely is holding on. Flush button. The switch, once again, is pretty flush and is in a slight recess, and this flush rides along the surface. So yeah, you'll get some scratching over the years as you switch it back and forth, and this can be a little bit difficult to access or to activate because it is so small, but you're less likely to accidentally hit that. It's pretty easy to flip, and if you drop it and it hits the ground, against the ground, just the way the handle and the head is, the switch is really pretty well protected, so I do approve of that. And servicing it is easy enough with the snap ring. All you do is just take a regular pair of snap ring pliers, and the criticism about using snap rings to hold together ratchets is the fact that you have to use up space. You don't want the head to be too thick, but if you want to have a snap ring, you're going to have a recess cut in there so that you can have a little lip for the snap ring to fit into, which of course means that the pawl has to be a little bit thinner, and then the ratchet anvil has to be a little bit thinner. But I guess that's part of the price that you pay sometimes. We can see it is actually, so this isn't even oiled. They actually looks like they're using, it is interesting, they're using a molybdenum grease in here. There is a O-ring around the anvil, so that's also good to see. And we can see that it is a single 72 tooth floating pawl. And if we take a closer look, we can see that the pawl is actually pretty wide, about as wide as you can physically fit in there and have it still work. So you're getting quite a bit of engagement. So I really don't think people are going to have much issues with this ratchet slipping. I'm actually pretty surprised about the amount of grease that they put inside there. So that's definitely a good sign. So not a lot else to say besides it's just kind of funny how each brand gets their own little slight customization on the ratchet. With the gear wrench, just a couple lines. Of course, the Duralast, they use knurling on it. The Master Mechanic, they have this kind of funny shape in there. But even though it's a Chinese ratchet, it is better than the Pittsburgh Pro Chinese ratchets, the Harbor Freight basic ones. Not as good as the Icons. To tell you the truth, for a straight ratchet, I would actually still take the straight handle 90 tooth Icons. Those straight handle ones are pretty nice, but definitely not over the flex heads. But as far as a Master Mechanic and a True Value ratchet, it's really not that bad at all. And if you can get it on sale, like I had a manager's special on hand tools, so it was down from 25 to 20 bucks. So that's why I picked it up. But even at its normal $25 price, this 3/8 ratchet really isn't too bad. I mean, it will serve, I'm sure it'll serve most people pretty much all their needs more than reliably enough. You know, you may have a little bit weaker of an angle anvil because of the quick release. But at least it makes up for it by actually being one of the nicer quick release mechanisms in the industry. Is at least it has a, some people may not like that the spring may be a little too strong, but really that's exactly what you want, to just make sure that there's no chance anything coming off of there. And it still works well enough just to be able to easily release the sockets. And that hole in the middle of the anvil on a 3/8 ratchet, you're probably not going to put enough force on just a standard size ratchet. They don't sell any special long, at least they didn't have on the shelf, extra long handles or anything like that. So ought to hold up just fine. It's just kind of funny that gearwrench seems to be really pitching their tools to a lot of different established companies. And it's just kind of hilarious how they're getting their ratchets pretty much everywhere. Anyway, I really appreciate everybody who's been watching and subscribing. And if you haven't subscribed, please do. Until next time, Catus Maximus out.